Shades of discrimination. Shades of discrimination. Shades. Shades of discrimination. Hi, my name is Kyla Halliday and welcome to my video presentation for the course Introduction to Caribbean Studies. Although we have delved into many fascinating layered themes and topics throughout this course, I have chosen to narrow in on the intersectionality of race, color, and class with a specific focus on colorism. In the Caribbean, of course. This would have been a theme that intrigued me throughout the semester, and I wanted to explore how it contributes to the modern-day representation of racism in this region. I was eager to engage in conversation with other Caribbean nationalities to gain their perspectives on how they view racism to persist or not in our present-day societies. In this video, we will briefly explore how these factors intertwine and shape social dynamics, identity, and opportunities within the region. Through research and several perspectives gathered from the interviews, I aim to shed light on the complex phenomenon of colorism and its impacts on individuals and communities. Let's dive in. The concept of racism in the Caribbean has been a subject of debate and conflict in opinions. Many individuals argue that racism does not exist in the region due to the predominance of the Black population. However, it is crucial to recognize that racism can manifest in various forms, including colorism, texturism, and featureism that are perpetuated within the Black community itself. The definition of racism that I think is most commonly referenced is the classic one, which is often associated with power and white-specific power structures such as our European colonizers. But racism extends beyond that to include internalized or personal racism, interpersonal racism, institutional racism, or systematic. The Caribbean region, with its rich cultural heritage and diverse populations, provides a unique lens through which to examine the intricate connections between race, color, and class. Within this context, the phenomenon of colorism emerges as a pervasive form of discrimination, influencing social dynamics, individual experiences, and opportunities. So let's talk about the historical, social, and psychological dimensions of colorism in the Caribbean, highlighting its impact on society and calling for greater awareness and change. The roots of colorism in the Caribbean can be traced back to the era of colonization and slavery. European colonizers imposed a hierarchical social structure that prioritized lighter-skinned individuals, associating them with power, privilege, and beauty, as this was the closest model to European standards. Lighter-skinned, fair, or red individuals often enjoy advantages in areas such as education, employment, and social status, while darker-skinned individuals may face systematic disadvantages. The intersectional framework highlights how multiple identities interact to shape experiences and opportunities. Gordon K. Lewis, in his book The Growth of the Modern West Indies, explores the historical development of the Caribbean and highlights how colonialism contributed to the perpetuation of color-based biases. The remnants of this colonial legacy continue to shape societal norms and perceptions, influencing the prevalence of colorism in the region. The work of E.M. Thomas Hope in Color, Class, and Identity, The New Creole Elites in Trinidad, sheds light on the intersection of race, color, and class within the concept of the Creole elites in Trinidad and Tobago. This study reveals the complex interplay between these identities, highlighting how individuals' social standing and access to resources are influenced by their skin color. Colorism reinforces existing socio-economic disparities in the Caribbean. Research papers and articles from academic journals such as the Caribbean Quarterly Social and Economic Studies and Caribbean Studies provide insights into the socio-economic impacts of colorism, as it also intersects with class, exacerbating socio-economic disparities within Caribbean societies. These sources highlight how individuals with lighter skin tones tend to enjoy better socioeconomic outcomes, including higher incomes, more professional opportunities, and increased social mobility. This unequal distribution of resources perpetuates a cycle of privilege and reinforces societal divisions. Conversely, darker-skinned individuals often face limited access to resources, educational opportunities, and professional advancement. The work of M.J. Hanchard in Orpheus and Power, the Movimiento Negro of Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo, discusses the racial and color dynamics in Brazil, which shares similarities with the Caribbean context. This comparative analysis further illustrates the socioeconomic consequences of colorism within a broader Afro-diasporic perspective. The psychological and emotional consequences of colorism are explored in studies such as Interrogating Caribbean Masculinities, Theoretical and Empirical Analyses by Rhoda Reddock. These sources reveal that darker-skinned individuals often grapple with lower self-esteem, internalized racism, and a sense of exclusion within their own communities. The constant reinforcement of color-based biases influenced by societal beauty standards takes a toll on individuals' well-being, contributing to feelings of inadequacy and marginalization. Colorism's impact extends beyond individual experiences, permeating Caribbean cultures and shaping societal perceptions. The work of S. Bond in The Color of Politics, Race and the Mainsprings of Politics in the Greater Caribbean discusses the relationship between race and politics. Colorism influences political power dynamics and social hierarchies within the region. Now let's take all that and get a little personal.
The tea is exceptionally good today. Who made this? Very delicious. Hold on.
I mainly considered 12 individuals' perspectives as I obviously could not engage in conversations with every single Caribbean national. Although I acknowledge that everyone may not share the same views and that these may be limited, I don't think that this should negate the relevance of these thoughts and experiences. Now, personally, during my primary school years, I unfortunately experienced instances of teasing and bullying, mainly from boys within my school. Some of these were boys who were of a lighter skin complexion of mine, but this also included those who shared the same skin complexion as mine and even those who were darker. This is unfortunately a reality for many young dark-skinned girls in the Caribbean, and it can have a great effect on self-esteem. This didn't really affect my self-esteem personally because I always knew I was that girl, but that's not the case with everyone. Most of the name calling for me was discounted by the obvious skin color similarities between me and those bullying me. These experiences highlighted the distressing reality of colorism and how it can manifest even within Black communities. At a young age, I had hoped that individuals who face similar challenges due to their skin color would be empathetic and supportive. However, I soon realized that colorism had deeply permeated our society, leading some individuals to internalize negative beliefs and perpetuate harmful stereotypes about their own racial group. It was disheartening and confusing to witness individuals who shared my skin complexion engaging in the same hurtful behavior that I did not expect and hope to be shielded from. Another vivid instance I personally had of racism, colorism, and classism I encountered was when my mom and I visited the Birkenstock shoe store in Trinidad and Tobago, along Circular Mall. As we entered, I couldn't help but notice that the store clerk was of a significantly lighter complexion than my mom and I. Expecting a warm welcome, we greeted the clerk, but to our dismay, our presence was completely overlooked and ignored. Now, we can simply chalk this up to another instance of poor customer service in Trinidad and Tobago. But we proceeded to explore the store, hoping to find the shoe we were looking for, and received absolutely no assistance or acknowledgement whatsoever. We waited patiently for about 5 to 7 minutes, growing increasingly disheartened, and I remember expressing my discomfort to my mom and asking to leave. However, our disappointment reached another level when a light-skinned, middle-aged couple entered the store just before we were about to leave. The contrast in treatment was immediately astonishing. The clerk abruptly stood up wearing a friendly smile and eagerly approached the couple, offering them a warm greeting and immediate assistance. It was a stark reminder of the harsh reality of personal racism and how deeply ingrained biases can influence interpersonal interactions, even within communities sharing the same race. Now, obviously, I did not interview this store clerk to find out what was going through her head, but one can assume. The last personal story I will give is when my mom's sister and I were getting a ride from an Indian sister at church. Another lighter-skinned lady sat beside her, and my mom's sister and I sat in the back seat on the way home. Whilst driving, a Black man gave her a bad drive or something of that nature. And in expressing her frustration, she so comfortably and casually included the N-word, referring to the Black driver. After calming down, the lighter-skinned woman beside her whispered something to her, and she turned around, glanced back, and offered a small apology for using the N-word. A little odd, but okay. Now, these are just a few of the many stories I can tell of how I feel like my skin color has affected my life experiences growing up and living in the Caribbean. In conversing with other Caribbean nationals, I received similar stories, and we're going to get into it, right?
Yeah, get into it!
One interviewee shared about the institutional racism that exists in many primary and secondary schools throughout the region, where Black students' hair especially is heavily policed, whereas whites and Asian students that are often the minority student body population have freedom to style their hair however they please. She tells of an instance where students were lectured to not come to school with their hair wassy or unkempt, and were even banned from putting their hair in puffs at a point in time as it was deemed distracting to learning. I don't know. Another interviewee spoke of a story where she performed a poetry piece emotionally recounting the experiences of her growing up with black skin and how that affected her life. After the performance, a white woman in the audience came up to her to compliment her performance, and in doing so said, "But you're not that dark though." Was that intended to be a compliment? And if so, what's so wrong about being that dark though?
What do you mean by that?
Our next participant, though significantly younger than other participants, was able to tell me about the many occurrences of racism in society that she has experienced and been aware of. She mentioned specific phrases like, "She real dark boy," or "I'm moving in the sun, I don't want to get black," and "How you looking black so?" where blackness and darkness is painted in a negative light as something unacceptable that you should not strive to be or even want to be. In addition to that, I have personally received many backhanded compliments like, "You pretty for a dark-skinned girl," and "Oh, your hair actually nice," which I consider demeaning and not complimentary at all. A male interviewee now, although dark-skinned himself, shared that he becomes more aware of race and skin color in his dating life. He has a preference or type for red or lighter skinned girls because that's who he is typically more attracted to. This goes to show the European beauty standard ingrained in our society, where lighter features are seen as more beautiful or attractive. I'm going a little further to link this to a conversation I would have had with a lighter skinned female friend of mine, where she was defending ideas like the one of the previous participant, saying, well, if that's their preference, that's their preference. But can we also acknowledge that this preference is one rooted in internalized racism and colorism?
Get them, Reggie. Show them what bees do.
Popular Tobagonian travel vlogger Shanda Brand recently posted a video and expressed that she misses out on many work opportunities simply because of how she looks as a dark-skinned female. She works in the carnival industry, and can you believe that in promotion for our region's many carnival celebrations and activities that boost our local economies, promoters are overlooking dark individuals for marketing, even though our populations consist of many individuals who share Shan's beautiful dark skin. Now, I recall watching a behind-the-scenes video of a carnival costume photoshoot on TikTok, and one person highlighted in the comments that all the girls were red, which led to many other comments sharing their perception of the discrimination of skin color used in Caribbean marketing. Some spoke of the fact that club photographers are directly told sometimes to only take pictures of white or light-skinned girls so that they can share this content. Another spoke of a specific rum company that deliberately only uses individuals of white and Indian descent in their promotional banners and flyers.
A holistic summary on the findings of my explorations on the concept of race in the region. In investigating the views in the Caribbean, most participants would have agreed on the great prevalence of racist ideologies ingrained in our societies, although few did not see racism or colorism to be a great cause of concern, but this percentage made up the minority. I would also like to add that colorism exists in other ethnic groups apart from just the Black community, but considering the demographic of our region, I mainly heard about colorism from voices in the Black community. It would be interesting, however, to further explore a larger population's view on race in the region, as well as how colorism may play into other racial groups like Indian communities, for example. Racism as well can be directed to other communities outside of the Black population in the Caribbean, and may even be coming from Black members of our regional society towards other groups, especially in islands that have a larger multiracial population. Again, for the purpose of this relaying, no expression of such was reported as participants were mainly Black, but this does not dismiss these occurrences.
Now, I could sit here and give you all stories for days, but we don't have a lot of time. So I'm just going to give you the main trends I observed throughout the conversations I engaged in this process. Firstly, it seemed to be that the events of colorism and racism were more obvious to female participants. I don't necessarily think that this means that women tend to experience colorism more than men in society, but it was just an interesting note to make. Locality also played a huge role, as those from multiracial islands like Trinidad and Tobago were more expressive of their encounters of racism, compared to those from islands like St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. However, this does not mean that the others did not feel the impacts of such. Another interesting observation is that older participants involved in this study tended to be more dismissive with statements like, well, it have racism everywhere, and everybody does come together at the end of the day.
All right, we got to wrap this up, though.
Okay. My bad. I be trying to jump.
I couldn't
wrap
hear
it up
anything
then.
over there, to be honest.
Close it. Close it.
Close it.
How do we break this cycle, you may ask? While colorism continues to persist, many individuals and organizations in the Caribbean are actively working to challenge and dismantle this discriminatory practice. It is crucial to amplify these efforts and foster a society that values diversity and rejects color-based prejudices. But it doesn't end with color. Let's not forget the impact of class and discrimination within our society. It is within our grasp to dismantle these unjust systems and create a society that celebrates every shade, every background, every person. Let's celebrate the diversity that enriches our Caribbean identity. Let's educate ourselves and others about the damaging effects of colorism and racism, fostering empathy, understanding, and compassion. Now I've been doing a lot of talking, so let's wrap this up.
I couldn't
Wrap
hear
it up
anything.
then.
In conclusion, the intersectionality of race, color, and class in the Caribbean is a complex phenomenon that has deep historical roots and far-reaching consequences. Colorism perpetuates social inequities and impacts individuals' opportunities and even self-esteem. By acknowledging and addressing these issues, we can strive towards a more inclusive and equitable society in the Caribbean and beyond. Together, as a Caribbean community, we have the power to break these cycles and create a brighter and fairer future for all. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the intersectionality of race, color, and class in the Caribbean. I hope this video, though concise, not really, has shed light on the pervasive nature of colorism and inspired conversations about creating a more just and inclusive future. Remember, by understanding the complexities of our society, we can work together to break down barriers and celebrate the beauty of diversity.